All of you have probably heard and know something about such a place as backrooms, but hardly any of you know where this myth came from, just like this guy didn't. 3 years ago, he went missing in the state of California. They went on vacation as a family, put up tents, and while the family was resting, the man just decided to go to the bathroom to pee. But suddenly he noticed something that made him want to poop too.
There were stairs there.
To understand the essence of this story, you should know a little bit about how the so-called backrooms appeared. The first mention of the backroom was back in 1989 in California. In that year, there was a massive earthquake that claimed many lives. It's believed that's where the so-called anomaly was formed. And after that, the story was referenced and they invented this game and so on. So it's a kind of space-time gap between the two worlds. And you can get there at any moment by falling through the textures of our world. But the scariest thing here is that time in that world, and in ours runs differently. So, you go there, you stay there for a year, and you come back here. You'll find that only 3.5 minutes have passed here. Basically, no one will even notice you're missing, but that's just an assumption that's as provable as a horoscope. I mean, no way. But back to the story of this guy. It all started when Sam Pierce decided to take a trip with his wife and kids, and ironically, they were going to be traveling through California. It all happened on the third day of their vacation. They drive up to a cozy lake and are shocked by the aesthetic views of the lake and begin to dismantle their tents and decide to stay there for the night. While the wife and children are resting there, the husband decided to go a little farther into the woods to apparently do his wet work. But the weirdness begins at this very moment. Camera footage shows him rapidly moving deeper into the woods. It lasts for 10 minutes. So it's like he's going to a specific place. I don't think he was that afraid of anyone seeing him. I mean, he was probably looking for something specific. And here's where it gets interesting. At some point, Steve's wife notices that he's been gone a long time and decides to go looking for him. After walking around some part of the woods, she realizes he's missing. She calls the police, as she realizes she's unlikely to find him herself. But then an interesting thing happens. While the police are on their way, the wife gets a text message on her phone with just one video. So, no text, just one video file, which confirmed all her fears.
When I was here on Wednesday, this, I think, was about as far as I got. I haven't gone any further than this. I sort of chickened out and ran back up to go home, get some more space to record my phone, since I was really low.
Apparently, he thought he'd found the place he was looking for. But once inside, he realizes that at the very least, it all looks pretty strange. When the police arrived, they once again checked the entire forest within a 1-kilometer radius. They found nothing like what was on that video. Pierce himself was reported missing, and the case was never closed. And naturally, the wife was the first suspect, which is what happens most of the time, by the way. I mean, when one spouse dies, the other spouse is often blamed for his or her death, and it ends up that way. But there's a very interesting point here. You remember that rule about the time difference. As the wife said, she didn't notice her husband was missing until about 20 minutes later. So in theory, the husband could only have been there for 5 years at that point. So I suggest that the man was simply abducted by aliens. If you've ever liked to play hide and seek and hide in a closet, believe me, after this story you won't do that. I think that many of you have had that your older brothers or sisters locked you in the closet and kept you there for a while. There's basically nothing dangerous about it, unless you've been locked in a closet for 6 years, which is what they did to this girl. Her name is Lauren Atkinson, and she was kept in a closet for 6 years. When she was rescued, the doctors were shocked at what they discovered, both on and inside her body. What's really scary is not even the condition she was in afterward, but how it all happened, and who was to blame for it all. Lauren's been in a bad way since she was born, and her mother Barbara immediately gives her up for adoption. She's adopted by Sabine and Bill. Oddly enough, these were the best days of Lauren's life. Her adoptive parents treated her very well and always bought her lots of clothes, toys, and all sorts of interesting things. But her birth mother Barbara comes back and says she's changed her mind. I mean, she wants the baby back. And as outraged as her adoptive parents were, Barbara was able to do it because the paperwork had not yet been made. Just so you understand, her birth mother Barbara led a very unseemly life, but what she did next was too much even for people like that. So the girl returns to her family home, and within weeks the madness begins. Her birth mother Barbara drank a lot, and she was always snapping at her daughter. When her foster parents visited the girl anyway, and came to their house, they noticed some red marks on her body that looked like fresh lashes. She also noticed blood in the girl's mouth, and when she asked Barbara what the cause was, Barbara said it was just none of your business. So according to Lauren herself, when her birth mother and her stepfather got drunk, they just started using the girl as a plush toy. I mean, they'd abuse her and kick her around the room like a ball, just for fun. She was so intimidated and was afraid to even say a word because it would lead to more scandal. At one point, her mother even started drowning her head in the sink just for fun, so she and her husband could just laugh it off. But that's not even the horror. The horror is that when they didn't have any money, she and her husband even rented their child, Lauren, to pedophiles for a certain kind of entertainment, so to speak. For your understanding, she was only 3 years old. And naturally, when she didn't like it and she was crying all the time, her mother, Barbara, was sick of it. And then, the moment comes. That's the day she locks her in the closet and never lets her out of there again for 6 years. 3-year-old Lauren lived every day in the closet, feeding her with table scraps or animal food, and sometimes forgetting that she needed to eat anything at all. She was only allowed out of the closet for 2 minutes a day, and that was to beat her for sitting there crying. Day after day she spent in that closet, seeing the whole world only through a small slit. She just stopped realizing where she was and who she was. I mean, imagine how deformed the consciousness of a person who just doesn't communicate with the world around her is. She basically survived only because one of her sisters fed her with stolen food for animals. One day it all comes to an end. The mother had a fight with her husband, and he retaliated by telling the child welfare authorities. So when the police came to their house, they were shocked, at least at how much it stinks in their apartment, and at most at what they saw in the closet. The body of the then already 8-year-old Lauren was like that of a 3-year-old child. She weighed only 11 pounds, her teeth were broken, her stomach was bloated, and the back of her body was completely skinned. Just keep in mind that her toilet was basically this closet the whole time. The doctors said Lauren would last a few months, but a miracle happened, and she did survive and recover. So you could even say that this story had a happy ending, because Lauren even went to high school and then college after that. Her mother Barbara and her husband were put away for life. There's just an important fact here. This family had a total of 5 children, and for some reason, Lauren was the one they treated the way they did, and all the other kids weren't neglected, and no one beat them up in any way. But the point is, this is not an isolated incident. You realize that there are plenty of such things in our world. Perhaps it is in your family there is violence, and you must realize that this is not normal. And at the very least, you have to tell your classmates at school. And for parents like you, I have just one question. Why are you having a baby? And we move on to the next story. I'm sure all of you imagine working as a security guard or watchman, that you just sit there all night or flip through TikTok. That's how this dude who got a job as a guard at a school imagined it. But he didn't even know what he was guarding her from. This guy's name was Amir Vaskuna, maybe still is. To somehow provide for his family in 2017, he decided to get a job. But unfortunately, due to his goofiness, he was only accepted as a security guard. Not the worst job for him, say you, but actually the worst. He literally couldn't stand the dark and was very fearful. His alcoholic friends naturally knew this and had scared him and made fun of him many times. But this time, Amir was not in the mood for jokes. Every night he had to be alone with a huge building, which he had to walk around several times throughout the night, holding only one flashlight in his hand. According to Steve's wife, this happened on the 4th night. He was getting used to it, and basically thought he had slowly conquered his fear of the dark. But believe me, he was a little hasty with his conclusions. At about 2 in the morning, Amir heard a strange sound in the hallway similar to the creaking of the bed, as if someone was jumping on it. And then Steve realizes that no fear he has not overcome, and in general it is better to quit this job. But still, because of a sense of duty, apparently decides to check. He runs away to his cell, closes himself in there, and hopes that it was just a bad dream. But then it hit him. He remembered that he had told his drinking buddies about which school he worked at. At the same moment, someone knocks on the door. He opens the door, and his friends burst into his room laughing. Amir was incredibly startled. They joke around, laughing that Amir fell for the joke. But after that, the friends go home, and Amir returns to the guard post. And here's where it gets interesting. Half an hour has passed since his friends left. That is about 4 o'clock in the morning. Amir slowly falls asleep in his chair, with one eye looking at the cameras and the other dreaming. With that one eye, which by some coincidence was looking at the cameras, he notices some movement. He gets up from his chair and starts laughing, thinking that it's one of his friends staying behind to play another prank on him. But as he gets closer to the place, the smile disappears from his face.
Hey. Yee.
He was sitting in this room with security cameras, and what he saw was right here. Accordingly, this someone or something was there all the time, right next to Amir, and he just didn't notice it. He decides to go around the room again, hoping that it is one of his friends.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Looking at a video like this makes me think that security guards in Mexico should get a raise. I don't know, maybe it's some high school kid coming in to correct a math test. Or it could be one of Amir's friends who won't admit it. The fact remains that Amir never showed up another day at this school. So it's better to go to school as a student now, so you don't have to go there as a security guard later. If you love my content, then like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new releases.